go. So this is standard procedure. We always tend to make sure that we have a backup day, launch day, in case we do have scrubs like today. So this is pretty normal and standard. Nothing to be worried about. Again, we do this for the safety of our vehicles, as well as today we had astronauts on our vehicle. So even bigger reason for us to make sure that we have safe weather for them to fly.
And just a reminder for everyone still tuned in, it takes about 40 minutes for all of this propellant to come off of the Falcon 9. And while it is offloading that launch escape system on Dragon, which is designed to pull the capsule away if there's any issue with the rocket or anything on the pad, that is still armed. So we're going to continue to stay with this until all the propellant's off, and then we'll see the launch escape system get disarmed. Bob and Doug will be able to open up their visors again. The launch crew access arm will swing back out and link up with Dragon, and they'll make their way off and then down the tower at the pad. But if you're just now tuning in, no launch today. We did have to scrub because of weather. We're going to be moving to our second attempt on Saturday, just a little bit earlier in the afternoon. Just going to continue to stand by as this propellant comes off. We heard a call that everything was going nominally or as expected so far. And then once all the propellant's off, we should see Bob and Doug make their way out of Dragon shortly after.
What you're seeing on your screen is a live view of Bob and Doug on the right side inside of Dragon as they're waiting for propellant to be removed from the vehicle so that it is safe for them to disarm the launch escape system. This will take a bit of time. So
Soy yo, me pareció haber entendido que quizás se suspenda el despegue por el tema del clima. No sé, me pareció en un momento haber entendido eso. Pero estamos ahí nomás. Y veo que no.
Up until the point of the scrub, we had a really clean countdown. Weren't tracking any issues with Falcon 9 or the Dragon spacecraft, so always a good thing to see. We did have to scrub because of that weather. To be a little bit more specific, we were still in violation of one of the weather criteria. It was the strength of electric fields in the atmosphere that the 45th Space Wing and other weather operators are monitoring around the launch pad. And that's one of those rules where we need a certain amount of time if we're in a violation. In this
are
case,
nominal, roughly 50% on stage 1 locks in fuel, 85% on stage 2 fuel.
So the propellant offload on Falcon 9 continuing to go well. But we needed a little bit more time if we were going to be able to clear that launch weather constraint. And since we do have an instantaneous launch window today, we weren't able to make it. So we hope for better weather coming up on Saturday, where again our next launch attempt is going to be at 3:22 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll be able to go through everything. I mean, we saw them get suited up. They had a great ride out to the pad. All of their initial checks on both the suits with pressure checks and communication checks went well. Able to get the Dragon hatch closed, the launch escape system arm, and Falcon 9 started its fueling, just not able to make a good weather window today.
And as John and I said earlier, it was just another great rehearsal today. I don't think you can get enough practice doing this. So when Saturday comes, or when the day that we can actually launch the vehicle, Bob and Doug and the NASA and SpaceX team are fully prepared with just an extra rehearsal on the belt now.
Yeah, as we had talked a couple of times throughout our countdown, the weather is a lot more complex when we're launching humans. You have some more stringent requirements in place, not only around the pad, but in the case of this launch today, we were also looking at whether the entire ascent corridor, as we call it, so basically the entire way that they were flying up the east coast of the United States in this launch today, we're monitoring that weather because those are areas that if they have an ascent abort, or basically Dragon firing off of the Falcon 9 while they're flying into space, we have to make sure that conditions are good in the sea states around those areas, just so they're not going to be landing in the middle of a hurricane, which we did have a tropical storm forming right off the coast of South Carolina today, just to help complicate things a little bit.
And people might be asking, if we knew the weather was going to be a little iffy today, why continue to count down? Well, that is the reason why we do all these checks all the way to count down. In Florida, the weather is, pretty sporadic. Sometimes a thunderstorm or hurricane will pass through. Within 20 minutes, it's gone, and we could have clear skies for a safe launch.
Pero voy a seguir acá conectado hasta que termine la cuenta regresiva. Como parece que la cuenta regresiva igual continúa.
Continue to monitor weather all the way down to the last minutes of the count, and we see what happens. So today, unfortunately, we did scrub for weather, but we will attempt again this Saturday on May 30th.
Y se hace el sábado. Se va a hacer el lanzamiento el sábado. Next Saturday.
And, Dan, Jesse,
wow,
a couple of things to add on there. Right now we are 11 minutes after the scrub was called. Liquid oxygen and fuel are coming off of the first stage. Hard to tell from the view. It's still a little misty around the tank because there's LOX on board. But we're between half and a third of each of the fuel and LOX tanks filled on the first stage. So propellant coming out right per plan. The second stage fuel tank is offloading. That's going slower, but it's also a smaller tank. It doesn't take very long to either load it or to offload it. The other thing that we're working on is the high pressure helium spheres as well as the nitrogen spheres for the landing leg system. The pressure will be brought down on those, eventually getting it down low enough to where people can re-enter the pad area. So right now the team is preparing, once they get a permission, the SpaceX ingress technician team will come back inside.
Ahí están reconectando la manga que sacaría a los astronautas de la cápsula.
Open up the hatch and assist the astronauts out of the Dragon. I'd like to point out that for those who are wondering whether or not, having gone through this, putting propellant, pressurization gases on, getting fairly close to launch, whether that has done anything to wear out the Falcon 9 or the Dragon, the answer is no. If you can recall, the Falcon 9's designed
bueno, mejor que sea el sábado porque no es día de semana, más tiempo libre.
To find that we probably got enough margin to continue keep flying. So this is the very first flight of a new first stage and a new second stage. So we haven't even gotten through the first flight, and in all of our margin calculations, we also take into account the fact that we may scrub a launch. So even today's operation, where we have pressurized and we have stressed the vehicle a little bit, that's taken into account in our design and our qualification testing. The other good thing is that the most stressing part of the flight for the Falcon 9 on the first stage is the re-entry. So we didn't even get through that. So we're sitting here on the pad. It's a fairly straightforward situation and not stressing on the Falcon 9. And on the Dragon spacecraft, with the human rating factors to carry crew, there is enough factors of safety, margins of safety, redundancy, that just having two people on board and closing the hatch and even pressurizing the propellant system does not eat into the margins.
Offloads continue nominally 30% on stage 1
so
launch,
right now everything's continuing to offload. The automatic sequences that we use routinely, both at the launch sites, Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral, even Vandenberg Air Force Base, as well as
bueno, fue un
Texas
ensayo, ¿no? O sea,
first and second stage. Those
por lo
sequences
menos
are
ahora el
running,
próximo
propellant is
lanzamiento
coming
ya van a
off of
tener
the
un montón de
vehicle
cosas
per plan.
resueltas.
And we see Bob and Doug up in the Dragon spacecraft, just waiting when we can get up there, open the hatch, and help them egress and come on back down the tower. And the other thought I had, Dan and Jesse, is right now we are coming up on what would have been T0.
Vea que son esos trajes.
10 minutes from now,
Tío, parece de futuro, parece de una película de ciencia
would turn
ficción.
around and say, yes, it turned good. You just didn't have a long
Tengo
enough
entendido igual que
window, only
para
1 second,
el
and
exterior
you did 10
usan
minutes.
otro traje, digamos.
So we'll have to ask offline and say, hey, did the weather conditions improve? And one thing I'll tag on to that Dan was mentioning and Jesse was talking about, the launch opportunities. the launch window does move earlier on Saturday a little bit. So it just happened to be Orbital Dynamics said today, if you want to go to the International Space Station and you want to launch northeast, which is the approved trajectory, you have to go right at 4:35 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. You pick another day, the T0 moves. It's just luck of the draw. We might have been doing this at 8 in the morning when we were getting lightning, or we could have been doing it a few hours from now when conditions may have been acceptable. So in the end, we can all look at Isaac Newton and Johannes Kepler for Orbital Dynamics telling us when do we launch, and that stuck us right in the middle of a period of bad weather. So there's my science lesson for today, Dan and Jesse.
Appreciate that, John. That helps soften the blow of just moving past that T-0 time. But for anybody, if you're just now tuning in, wondering why Falcon 9 is still sitting there on the pad as we move past that T0, we did have a scrub for weather today. Just not able to clear all of those constraints. We keep a very close eye on the weather around the pad and
se suspendió.
Dragon SpaceX for weather.
Acá vemos a los astronautas abandonando la nave.
Right now, Bob and Doug are still
SpaceX Dragon, go ahead for weather.
Yeah, I just wanted to give you some more words.
Está todo recontra nublado, no se puede,
so
no se puede despegar.
Due to 3 rules that we were violating. All 3 would have been expected to clear 10 minutes after our T0 time. And those 3 were natural lightning, the fuel mills, and the attached anvil.
Yeah, we copy, Jay. We appreciate that update. We can see some raindrops on the windows, and just figured that whatever it was too close to the launch pad at the time we needed it not to be. So we appreciate that. Understand that everybody's probably a little bit bummed out. It's just part of the deal. Everybody was ready today, and we appreciate that. And the ship was great. And we'll do it again, I think, on Saturday.
Copy all, and yeah, we concur. And appreciate your resilience sitting there in the vehicle.
We got the easy job. Nothing better than being prime crew on a new spaceship.
Copy that.
Some great words from Bob and Doug. They're feeling good inside Dragon. They'll be ready to go when we make our next attempt on Saturday. Right now, we're just still waiting for all of the fuel to come off the Falcon 9 rocket. After
Stage 1
that,
LOX and fuel roughly 20%, and stage 2 fuel 36%.
so that call right there, we're still at a little over 20% on fuel, RP1, and LOX, liquid oxygen on the first stage, and then at about 26% on RP1 on that second stage. So again, it takes about 40 minutes once the process starts, so we should have right around 30 minutes or so until all that fuel's off. And then the crew will get to go to disarm the launch escape system. We'll see that crew access arm swing back into place, and they can begin to egress or get out of the Dragon spacecraft.
You heard it live, that weather update of what we violated. We were just 10 minutes off, unfortunately, but again, today was an instantaneous launch. And as John explained, it's due to the orbital mechanics and making sure that at the time we launch, it will allow us to get to the space station on time and accurately.